As many of you all know, we had an election back in November, and as a result of that election, an overwhelming mandate from the American people, there's a new president in the White House, and that, of course, is our president, President Donald Trump, who has immediately gotten to work on his America First agenda for the Department of Defense. Among those are four top-line points that I think are very important for those in this room to understand. Those are protecting the U.S. homeland, deterring China, and maintaining the ability to strike America's enemies anywhere in the world, and then also asking our allies to do more. We all know that this is a tall task, to be sure. So President Trump knew we needed a certain type of leader to bring the department into the 21st century, and he found that leader in now Secretary Pete Hegseth. So in less than 2 months, Secretary Hegseth has taken monumental steps to return the Department of Defense to its core mission, which is warfighting, lethality, meritocracy. In a very, very short amount of time, Secretary Hegseth has restored the warrior ethos. He's declared DEI dead at the DoD. He's made the sovereignty of our borders a matter of national security. And we are refocused on training, fitness, and high standards across the board here in the Department of Defense. So before we get into our updates today, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that this Department of Defense is committed to achieving our mission of maintaining the greatest fighting force the world has ever known, and returning the Department of Defense back to the American warfighter and making it more transparent to the American taxpayer. So starting out, as I'm sure you've all seen over the weekend, U.S. Central Command Forces initiated a series of operations consisting of precision strikes against Iran-backed Houthi targets across Yemen to restore freedom of navigation and reestablish American deterrence. For years, the Houthis have targeted U.S. military ships and aircraft. They've hit commercial ships as well, including U.S. flagged vessels, and they threaten our personnel overseas. Houthi terrorists have launched missiles, one-way attack drones at U.S. warships over 170 times, and at commercial vessels 145 times since 2003. Under President Trump and Secretary Hegseth's leadership, we will defend our sons and daughters. If you shoot at American troops, there will be consequences. As President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made clear, these actions by the Houthis will not be tolerated. In his first 2 days back at the White House, President Trump signed an order laying out a process to redesignate the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization after the previous administration revoked their designation within weeks of taking office. Under the previous administration, America's enemies were emboldened and billions in frozen funds were unlocked for Iran. With President Trump and Secretary Hegseth's leadership, an era of peace through strength is back. We will use overwhelming lethal force until we have achieved our objective. With that said, and this is a very important point, this is also not an endless offensive. This is not about regime change in the Middle East. This is about putting American interests first. As I said over the weekend, there is a very clear end state to this operation. And that begins the moment that the Houthis pledge to stop attacking our ships and putting American lives at risk. Shifting focus to Africa, at the request of the federal government of Somalia, U.S. Africa Command Forces conducted collective self-defense airstrikes against al-Shabaab on March 15th. The airstrikes occurred about 150 kilometers northeast of Mogadishu, Somalia, and AFRICOM's initial assessment is that enemy combatants were killed and that no civilians were injured or killed. And so U.S. forces will continue to partner with Somali armed forces to take the fight to these terrorists and degrade their ability to plan and conduct attacks that threaten the U.S. homeland, our forces, and civilians abroad. Now on to Homeland Defense. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have been very, very clear that border security is national security. We spent decades defending foreign nations' borders while our own U.S. borders has been invaded by criminal illegal aliens, human smugglers, drug traffickers, and transnational gangs. The Department of Defense is proud to defend our homeland and the territorial sovereignty of the United States. Although we've seen a 93% decrease in illegal border crossings, we will not stop until we have 100% operational control of our southern border. And over the weekend, Joint Task Force Southern Border assumed the mission from Joint Task Force North and reached initial operating capacity. Additionally, U.S. Northern Command announced on Saturday that the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, the USS Gravely, departed Naval Weapons Station Yorktown for a scheduled deployment to the Gulf of America. We're actually making some history from the podium today. It's the first time we've recognized the Gulf of America in the Pentagon press briefing room, which is kind of cool. So it's not only vital for the United States to have control of our border via land, it's equally important to control our territorial waters. And this deployment directly supports U.S. Northern Command's mission to protect our sovereignty. And lastly, Secretary Hegseth spoke with Qatari Minister of State for Defense Affairs, His Excellency Sheikh Saud Al Thani, to discuss operations to eliminate the Houthi threat to American commerce and restore American freedom of navigation. The Secretary acknowledged Qatar's strong partnership in addressing shared security challenges across the region, including Syria and the Red Sea.